Not yet. And then, of course, I have to figure out when we actually go live. I depend too much on the YouTube side, and then I realize I'm already behind by the time it says go live. Had to mute it. Well, hello everybody. Hello. Once again, I have assembled the top group of UAP scientists. Once again, I keep adding to the group because I'm searching for. One of my theories is that unlike in the animal world, unlike in the animal kingdom, where intelligence seemed to be pretty much even across the board amongst species, that among humans, we have been given the gift of a broad range of intelligence, right? See, I've started to go down a rabbit hole. But anyway, I have assembled Chris Lehto. He's up here. He's over there. You all know Chris. Everybody knows these people. I just thought you all want to do an introduction? There's Alexei, Novitzki below. I feel like the Brady Bunch.
How's it going?
Rather be Squidding. Okay, Rather. Is that your real name, Rather? Or is that your...
It's a pseudonym. I like to actually go physically go down to the docks and pick out the squid and fry them up for calamari. But I'd rather be here today.
Did you hear about the social media star or the person who got banned from social media because their name was like Squid Game or something like that because of the Netflix series?
Yeah, I'm definitely getting a lot of Squid Game advertisements, I think, maybe based on my name.
But rather, let's start with you since this is the first time I've had you on. Just kind of a brief, I look at you as kind of the scientist of the group, maybe. What is that true?
I have a master's in computer engineering, so I'm not really a formal scientist, but I do, look at things with a scientific kind of mind. Been interested in UFOs and this stuff for, as long as I can remember. Started kind of doing my own YouTube videos and investigations about a year ago when I saw a lot of threads in this topic that weren't really getting addressed like I would like them to be addressed. So I kind of tried to start my own YouTube channel and started throwing my ideas out there, and looking forward to discussing some of them here.
I remember when I first saw your channel, I thought, you know what, this guy takes the scientific approach. I'm going to click subscribe on his channel.
Appreciate that.
And see, that's one thing that's why I'm attracted to all three of your channels, is because I'm in a real search here. And, anyway, I'll quit rambling. Alexei, you're kind of an all around. How do we describe you? What's your introduction?
Been learning in my dreams since the age of 5 kind of thing. Lifetime practitioner of meditation. Wanted to learn how to explain telekinesis and clairvoyance through physics. So I got my undergraduate degrees in astrophysics, physics, planetary science, and astronomy. Then got a master's in mechanical engineering. So I want to apply my theories to some engineering projects. There we go.
And then, of course, Chris Lehto, the famous retired F-16 fighter pilot.
Yes. Yeah, I'm Chris. Been YouTubing kind of like Rather. Just started last December, and then got pulled into the UAP discussion with the big release from the 25 June report and those 3 Navy videos. I saw those and the David Fravor, Lex Fridman interview. Watched that. So basically been making videos since just the end of May. So trying to spin up quickly into the UAP community and everything. I just want to say I'm happy you guys made the decision to go and start making YouTube videos. I remember hitting publish, and it's not like it's kind of a scary proposition. Even now, when I go to hit publish, man, that last one I was cussing at the government. Yep. Still, so I'm glad you guys are out there making videos.
I actually appreciate those. I appreciate those kind of videos, Chris, because it kind of gives us so many people get on YouTube and they act. They put on a persona, right? And those kind of videos kind of cut through the persona, the YouTube persona. They make us realize you're a real person, But I knew you were a real person. I just think it's kind of cool to see the dynamics, of people's personalities. But
I shared that last one.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I shared it on Twitter and stuff. I thought it was great how passionate you were.
So
Yeah.
I was telling
Thanks.
the guys before we started, I had these 3 subjects, and I thought we'd spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes or whatever. Really, we're just going to go with the flow here, but just to get started, I was really curious about, I'm looking at my notes here. I was curious about the Skinwalker ranch theory that you have, rather. And then I wanted to talk with Alexei about all of us, about dreams and the daily orbit cycles.
Yep.
And we'll talk about these. And then I'm still interested in how Chris's ideas tie in with everything, related to dark matter and just the universe as a whole. So with those 3 subjects, we should be able to solve everything today, and that's the goal. But
Lofty goal.
Just in case everyone's here, obviously, I guess I'm probably the least familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, but you are, Alexei, right?
I've seen a couple videos. I haven't been there or anything.
I tended to put it in the paranormal category for some reason for so long, and I didn't realize there had been that much study honestly done on it.
Well, my understanding is perimeter, right? It's like a hot spot for almost everything, right?
Yeah, essentially, right? There's been, for the last 20 years or so, there's been, some scientific teams who've been studying that, and they all claim to experience some really wild things, like seeing Sasquatches going through portals and invincible wolves and things like that, things that seem incredible, right? But then you realize that there's these government scientists who are, reporting on and saying that they experience these things, and it begs the question, why would you make something like that up?
But you had a theory about a biological effect or a cause of.
Yeah. So, I look at these stories and I think, wow, right? This is incredible. How can you explain this? And really the only thing that kind of makes sense to me is, if there's some sort of biological agent here, right? Something that there's a lot of behavior altering pathogens out there, rabies, things like that, that will infect you and cause you to have a abnormal fear of water or things like that. So there is precedence for pathogens infecting you and making you feel things and making you see things. And, when you talk about these crazy experiences that seem, to be someone's real truth, but then they're not being captured on photographic evidence, there's no real physical evidence of it, it kind of makes me think that it might be in the mind. And if it's in the mind, what could be causing that? And then when, you learn that the investigators who investigate the people who have these weird experiences also find out that those people have heightened immune system responses, and that they go home and they kind of like spread this phenomenon with other people in their home, it really lines up to a biological pathogen for me. And I of course don't know that for a fact, but I wish that avenue was investigated a bit more.
I had a thought experiment for you. It's not much of a thought experiment. It's as much of one as a carpenter could come up with. But what if you took, 6 people who were science minded like you guys? You blindfolded them. You took them to the site. You didn't tell them where they were going, and they didn't. Of course, if you took them to a place at Skinwalker Ranch, they probably wouldn't recognize it when you got them out of the van, right? And you placed them there. I wonder how much that the effects of just your mind has on, right? And you got out and you started looking, you tested the dirt, you tested the water. Would these things appear, or is that part of, or is that just crazy thinking?
That is a good thought. That's kind of a way to control the location, right?
I'll give you an example of this. When I was young, I got into project management before I started my company, and I went to work for this architecture firm as a project manager. And since I was new in the firm, they stuck me in this area where I had to go and take care of these projects with public housing, because the architecture firm that I worked for had the contract for the public house, right? So I didn't know anything. Here I am, a Southern boy from, out in the sticks. I come into this big city firm, knew nothing about downtown. And they said, okay, you got to go, I had to go measure the buildings and inspect them and draw them up and create specs. And I go down there, I go through 1 or 2 units, find nothing, just old, dilapidated, old rundown buildings, right? So I get all the information. I go back to the office. I found out I was supposed to go to the office before I went to the public housing units, right? I went in there and she said, okay, I'm going to have the maintenance guy go with you. I said, why? Because you'll get, you're going to get stabbed or mugged or because honestly, you're not the type of guy they'll think you're, the ganger bangers will think you're a cop or something, or you're, what I mean? In other words, so I went into the situation. This is probably a bad example, but I was trying to think of what experiences have I had where I've gone into a situation not knowing anything about it, and there was no fear. I had no fear going into the situation, and there was no event. There was no event, and I walked out. But to this day, people will tell me that was the craziest thing I ever did. So, does that make sense? Right? Would it have been different if I knew about the dangers of that?
Would you be more fearful if you knew about the dangers? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah. Would my behavior, because I had no fear, would I present myself differently if I had fear? Well, it's a question for Chris. When you go into battle, do you have the same? I know you can't go into battle without fear. I'm saying, what are you more prepared if you're a battle hardened guy and there's less fear, or your fear is more controlled? Then does anything I'm saying make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more you're mentally prepared, but you can totally psych yourself out. I've been, diving in the ocean, right, and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you just start getting a thought in your brain, and I remember just literally flying out of the water, getting back to the boat. So I think fear can be, I think transmitted is kind of what you're saying. Like, can it be like a meme? If you think like a meme that goes around changes people's opinions on areas. So yeah, without a doubt, you can change.
Well,
change
if we can theoretically send information telepathically, why can't we affect our surroundings with fear? Right? I don't know. I'm asking rather too. Has there been anybody that's gone to Skinwalker and not seen anything or had any kind of experience? Didn't people live there for a long time? Or
yeah, I mean, and to answer that question, there have been a lot of people on the production of Skinwalker Ranch, the History Channel show, the Dragon, don't have any effects from the show. But then again, you do have other people, like one of the executive producers, TJ Allard, went there, and he didn't have any paranormal experience per se, but he had a persistent 6-month illness that he couldn't figure out after he visited the ranch. So I think that it does affect people different ways. And I think that you're right. If you do have a fear of something, your mind can play tricks on you. And maybe it is your mind actually affecting the environment around you as well. But, I think that your mind can definitely play tricks on you. A kind of a funny story, when I was reading the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, it was like at 2 a.m. and I was reading the part about how, if you even, discuss the Skinwalkers, they'll come find you. And I heard around that point, I heard some weird noises in my backyard and some rapping on a tree, like someone was out there. I got up and I was, scared.
A dino beaver.
Well, yeah. And I looked I have a little security cam out by my garage, and I was, looking at it for about 5 minutes. And then I eventually saw 4 raccoons exit my backyard into my driveway. So, I was a little less afraid after I figured out it was probably just raccoons, but, the fear can play tricks on your mind.
I read that book last week. I'm sorry, Tony, but the Skinwalker book, how do you describe rather there's multiple people that seen the same effect? I think you're mentioning it's a hitchhiker kind of effect. It was one of the initial scientists I don't remember if he was a security guard, but he went back to his house, and then his wife saw like a wolf, a wolf that ran on two legs, and then his kids saw the same thing. How do you explain that, where you have multiple sightings from different people?
Yeah, and that is where kind of the biological theory does fall down potentially a little bit. Where I would address that is that power of suggestion, perhaps. If you come home and tell your wife and kids that I saw this giant wolf that was attacking me, and then they are infected with some biological agent that primes them for fear, I could kind of see that them kind of imagining with the help of some thing that's inducing fear that they might, with the power of suggestion, have a similar vision. But yeah, that is potentially a stretch.
And then the other thing is, what about the EMF detectors? Because I'm working with this other guy in Denmark, and actually, he's, well, I won't say it now, but let's say you can get some effects using a radio frequency detector, right? Have you seen on TV? There's a show. It's like Aliens in Alaska. There's some few other instances too where people are basically. I just watched it yesterday, but this basically they bring up an EMF reader, so radio frequency reader, to somebody's body, right? It was this guy's toe. And sorry, it was his leg, it's his thigh, his left thigh, right? And it gave off this detection. It was giving off a signal, right? So this EMF reader could detect it, and then they did a X-ray, and they found like this like biological circle, this little ball of tissue, and then they pulled it out, and then afterwards nothing. There was no detection. There was no signal anymore. They do the same thing at Skinwalker Ranch. Have you seen that? They have a video, like there's like the first episode, I think there was a cow that died, and they ran up, they had one of those EMF detectors. It's a trifold one. Actually, Martin, he was using the same one to detect signals. So I guess is that real evidence, or how would you explain that? I guess the trifold detectors.
Yeah, that is. So I haven't heard about actual implants being taken away and like those implants giving off EMF radiation. I think that'd be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, after they remove it, there's no EMF. This is it just in this show, and I've seen a couple other episodes. But basically, unless the show is fake, right? But basically, you have this trifold spectrum analyzer. Basically just detects a signal. It doesn't tell you what the frequency is. It just tells you that there's a signal there. And so, you move it around the room. It's just like no detection, right? Normal background electromagnetic fields. And then you take it to a certain area of space and it will give off this detection. It'll give the signal. And so that was for this guy's leg. He kept saying he'd been abducted. He's like, his whole life, he's like, yeah, I've been abducted by aliens. I keep telling people, nobody believes me. So he goes into this doctor's office and they detect it. They pull out this little thing, and then they just give it to him, right, in this little like Petri disc, and send it home with him. I was like, look, what is that thing, man? You're just gonna give it to this guy. He's gonna go home. So
what do you think of that, Alexei? You've been
hard
kind of
evidence.
quiet.
Well, I've been thinking about actually how you were talking about how the you could say it's almost like a disease. It comes back with you, so it's almost like part of you in a way. And when you think about the fifth dimensional structure of time, right, and we're experiencing our fourth dimension, we're basically manifested from the fifth dimension. Each type of flow, a quantum flow, has a different type of state to it. You can have turbulent regions, you can have laminar flows. Chris and I were kind of talking about this last time. And like the turbulent flows create more heat, more energy. And so when you think of a river of water, you could say like in certain areas of a river, certain life forms can exist. So in the middle of the river, you have big fish. On the sides, you have like algae growing, right? So depending on the flow of the river is what life forms can exist. So maybe the Skinwalker Ranch is an area that has a lot of life forms to begin with, different types of flows. And when you walk through there with your essence, you essentially give them a habitat in which they can grow. And so they latch onto you, follow your energy through that fifth dimensional structure. And, someone next to you has that same type of turbulent quantum flow. Now they can latch onto them. So it has to do with the turbulent nature of the loosh.
Yeah, no, so Alexei, you're kind of thinking that these things that Skinwalker are probably like real physical things, just in kind of a different side-by-side reality,
in a different dimension, essentially, probably, yeah. Like in a different flow of space around time. Yeah.
I like the mix of because some people think that there's only certain types of reality, like there's only objective reality or there's only subjective reality. I think they all kind of coexist. There are physical things and there are, things that exist beyond the physical. And I think this is kind of where those two kind of meld, right? Right? I'm asking really because you've got physical things, matter, right? Some people don't believe that matter exists until you observe it, but that doesn't explain. Are you smiling because that's your
Yeah.
your thought? Well, I know, but okay. But I honestly think that once I pass away, you all are still going to be enjoying the earth, right? And so I feel like that just because I leave this existence, it doesn't mean it just disappears, right?
We will enjoy it much less after that, though, Tony.
Well, that's a good point. But I want to see. This is the great question. I mean, really, honestly, all of these things come down to one question today. We can talk about in the end, and that is really what happens at. Isn't that what it all comes down to? That's going down a rabbit hole. What happens when we die? But and will we? But the question there is, if it's purely physical, then I'm in trouble, right? Because I would even though I might come back as a turtle, I'd still like to come back instead of not coming back. I guess.
So I guess that was an interesting point, though, from Alexei. So basically, I watched your video you sent out today. A very interesting point on observing how we observe the universe, right? And you basically went through Alexei's. When you start out, the first kind of sense that we get is a feeling, right? If you think back evolutionary, and so basically it's just, is there a wall or no wall, right? So there's no idea of distance. And then you get sound, right? And with sound now, you get an idea of movement. It's kind of what I understand. You get that Doppler effect. You can hear stuff going by, right? But you don't understand that the universe is still big, right? Or large. You don't get there's no idea of distance really until light, right? And then we could see light. And then you're saying that basically we could observe actual distances, so the actual physical makeup of the universe. Right,
based off the
Doppler light spectrum.
system,
yeah.
Right.
But then what about the next perception? It sounded like it was time. So how do we perceive time? So then now the universe changes. So we basically, Tony, I think is maybe there's more dimensions or more. I'm sure there's more parts of the universe we haven't perceived. And so what I understood, Alexei, is you were saying that at this Skinwalker Ranch, maybe that's a point where you have in this flow of matter or time, a place where all these things kind of interact.
Right.
So you have past our perception, maybe there's other levels of life forms that can somehow live in this area that's around Skinwalker Ranch. But then somehow I still don't understand how it could, latch on to someone. I thought it was cool, the idea, because it seems like it's definitely happening, this hitchhiker effect.
Well, as far as to explain it with the latching a little bit more, every time you have a thought, a want, don't want, assumption, expectation, any type of thing you hold true to you, you're essentially creating the nature about you. And if you think of an egoless person versus one that's completely free of ego and one of faith, you can imagine the light state, the incoming light state of the universe will just flow through someone that's faithful. Like they have no ego about them. If they get pushed, they fall, it's okay. But then you have someone who really tries to hold their posture within the flow of the river. So that actually creates a lot of turbulence, a lot of different types of ripples, you could say rapids within the river of time. And so what I was getting at is that different life form in a river here on Earth, different life forms live in different parts of the river. And so depending on what your energy essentially is what energies you will pick up and carry with you. And so maybe they're coming in because it's a magnetic vortex, right? And at that point you have that 4-to-1 stretch ratio, and so maybe that acts as some type of portal that allows you to pick up these interdimensional beings, and then they can essentially walk through you in the fluid of time and manifest in our 4-dimensional space. Potentially,
Yeah, crazy theory. Yeah.
When you mention interdimensional, do you What exactly do you mean by that? Are you talking about like, like a parallel universes, like the multi-world theory? Or are you talking about, like extra spatial dimensions or?
So it would definitely be parallel in a sense, but more radial. So if you consider this an orbit in time, right? So our entire universe is orbiting a greater center at an acceleration towards center at light speed. Because of that, we have, so basically when it comes to perception, the rawest creation of perception, what we have is a consciousness and we have a field of energy. So the experience that gets manifested is based off of our accelerative reference frame, right? That's the experience we all undergo, is essentially our accelerative reference frame in relationship to a field of energy. And so here you could just say that we're orbiting a greater center, right? And so we actually have an orbit, and that determines the length of the universe based off of the expansion of the universe. So your distance from center of time determines the expansion of the universe, because that's essentially the gravitational field you'd be undergoing. And our humanly experience, a 20 hertz beta center, exists at 25 miles away from the center of time. And so then you have inner rings of perception and outer rings of perception. I call the inner ring, our universe normally wouldn't even fully be interacting with it unless there was, because they're orbiting into more inside, or there'd be a universe orbiting more outside. But if you have a magnetic vortex with the proper 4:1 stretch ratio, well, hey, now all of a sudden that ring perfectly harmonizes with human consciousness.
I've always been curious how you work out the math on these orbits, the radiuses and all that.
Well, the easiest way to think of it is like what is a harmonic, right? What is an EM pulse? And essentially, anytime something rotates one time, it makes a pulse. And so, in the crystal of time, I say that there's habitable zones that are related to acceleration towards center at light speed. And so, if you have a 1 hertz wave, that means it has to orbit this greater center 1 time per second with an acceleration towards center at light speed. So that gives you a specific diameter for each conscious harmonic or each type of electromagnetic manifestation within our universe. And so you could say that the delta wave is the 1 hertz is 1 times 10 to the 7 meters. The beta waking state is 20 hertz, and that would be 25 miles sphere. And so what I think is wild is how that relates to, I'm going to sound wild here, but the whole flat Earth theory, because when you think about that view, now our entire experience is flattened. We live in a 25-mile sphere, and there would be an inner ring of perception and an outer ring of perception. And people are saying when they're at the 80 hertz beta state, gamma state, they're interacting with elves and beings from the inner Earth. I mean, it almost like makes perfect sense to me at this point that that's kind of what's happening. And it's almost undeniable. I mean, I wrote a 343-page book because I was pretty confident. But like, I really don't know. I've never been in inner Earth. I've never been in outer Earth. I'm on Earth. I've meditated, and I've thought about it. So.
It kind of what resonated for me was when you talk about how we come into existence is basically we're actually accelerating at the speed of light already.
Yes.
And that's why it's in an orbit, right? So we're basically circling around. You call the center of time, but we're accelerating towards it at light speed. So that's how we are materialized. But then you have these different orbits, and it's actually a sphere, right? It's not a. It would be a sphere.
A sphere, but I mean, galaxies get pretty flattened. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I guess my point is that whether it's perception or reality is that I feel like the structure for all this is in place, and that as our human consciousness interacts with it, it manifests for us. But I still feel like that it's in place, right? It's not something that I'm creating with my own consciousness, because otherwise it would be at different scales. We wouldn't all be able to experience it together, right? How would my consciousness create an existence that all three or four of us could, partake in together? Who's going to tune the radio to the exact right channel?
This might sound a little silly, but you have your raw fluid of experience. And then I don't know if you guys know about like making silicone wafers for computer chips, but basically they have a seed crystal and they'll dip it into like some raw liquid silicone and pull it up. And so if you think about the quantum nature of reality, what we have is DNA. And DNA is like the seed crystal that gets thrown into this raw fluid that then solidifies into our experiences. Just something that's been coming to mind.
Or
Well-
well, the consciousness. Maybe we could just go. It seems to make sense, Tony, for the you mentioned the consciousness, but I think that was kind of the point with Alexei, was to talk about this consciousness. You had a good point, Alexei, where you talked about again the same thing I just referenced about, you start out single cell organisms. They talk about feel, and then we evolve to learn sound, and then sight, and then maybe time or future. But basically, you mentioned that it's all like observing. It's all the same being. How do you mention that, or how would you articulate that?
Well, I mean, it's almost like, I hate to say it, but like the physical universe is like a distortion within time. And as you know, like when you have a cell and something enters the cell, things become aware of it, and then they understand if they need to get rid of it or keep it inside of it. So it's almost like the universe entered a cell, and you have the cardiovascular system of the dark matter web. But basically, then you have the human bodies that are the harmonizers of time. So we're like determining what's good, what's bad. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
my point is that the structure of the cell is there for you to enter, right? I didn't have to create the cell to be able to enter it.
It wouldn't have been you wouldn't have been able to enter if you didn't like smell good or taste good to begin with, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it related to my at least my view or theory, if you will, is about the consciousness could it be a creative engine, like you mentioned the cardiovascular system, but could it be like, Tony, you're actually you're here to see the world, to actually to create it, essentially, like observing is creating, but does that make sense? It's like each one of us can see the same universe through different eyes, but then we're able to see each other and possibly create things based on, basically it's an engine for growth. If that makes sense.
You're kind of saying that the tree fell in the woods and no one was there to hear it. Would it make a sound kind of
Yes.
thing?
Well, I know, but I do believe that tree makes a sound, because it's creating a vibration, and the life around it feels it fall, and probably some of it gets crushed by it, right?
Yeah.
So that's my point, is that I feel like there's a structure in place, and we're passing through it. It's not,
or we observe it, is kind of what I was saying,
Yeah.
Tony, is that you're like there to watch the tree and be like, oh, that's messed up, or whatever. So you give some to
but I didn't
it.
create the tree.
Yeah, you didn't create it, but it created on its own, and so you're there to actually observe it, to see.
I can get on board with
move
that.
it forward.
I'm the part I have a hard time with, and again, I'm trying to be an objective person, and I'm listening to Alexei every time he speaks, but I'm trying to, I'm in my own mind come up with a way that I can justify us all experiencing it together. When was the coordination for us to experience this experience right now? I coordinated it, but there was a framework. StreamYard is the framework that we decided we were going to come together at that point, right?
So the why, I mean, that's beyond. That's the ultimate question, is the why, and ultimately, in my little opinion or whatever, it's to experience. So.
Yes, that's it. To experience, to observe, but really to experience.
Right.
To create. That's what I think, or I don't know. That's what it felt when I. That's what resonated with me when I listened to your.
Like we all come in with you could say a gut vibration, and it is to experience that, or and then ultimately harmonize with the laminar flow of the greater structure.
Now, the next kind of, do y'all mind if I bring up something that's related to this? And because it's related to orbits, right? So on a different scale, you have this daily orbit concept that you're talking about. And when I read that, I immediately had to have an interview with Alexei, okay? Because it's so bizarre how that structure fits in with the way my dream, with the way my nightly dream habits are, and the way what I've experienced since I've had my experience when I was 12 or 13 years old, right? And it's a really long story. It's a 40-something year story, okay? So I can't tell it all. But basically, in a nutshell, when I had my experience, I started questioning everything, right? I grew up in a Southern Baptist home, right? You weren't supposed to question the King James Bible.
I gotta go plug in.
So I had, you're coming back.
I'll stay on. I just got to walk to a plug.
Okay, so I had to do my search. I had to do my journey secretly for a long time till just recently, right? That's how long. Because the whole time I'm teaching my kids the Southern Baptist way. Of course. Anyway, this gets into so many different subjects because I have a child who's extremely smart, like Alexei, and and he learned to question everything pretty much on his own because I didn't try to influence. I never tried to influence my kids with politics or religion, right? So anyway, I'm trying to get, how do I get focused on this? Okay, it's hard, it's difficult because it's such a long story, and it took a long time to get to this point where. At some point, when I'm studying all the different world religions, I'm studying Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism and all this, and I start getting into meditation. And that was when I felt like the more I realized that there was this bigger picture, the more I felt like I was tuning into something. Does that make sense? And it started happening to me on this schedule, basically, of what Alexei is going to explain is the daily orbit. And 2:30 in the morning, when you read his book and you see that concept, I immediately had to contact him because every night, basically, I go to bed with pleasant dreams, pleasant thoughts. I try to read, positive things and all of this. I try to get in that spirit of rest and relaxation, right? Meditate and all this. 2:30, bam, awake. Presents. Okay, they're gone. Okay, is that I can't explain to you. And this is the reason I've never talked about this before is because it's crazy, right? And people will think I'm crazy, but I'm at that point in my life now where, I have enough money. I don't need to worry about not having any work or how it's going to affect me. So I can talk about it now. And it's really liberating, right? But basically, I know the exact difference. I experienced the exact difference between normal dreams and this event that happens to me almost on a nightly basis because I've studied it for almost 20 something years now. Because once it started happening to me, I started becoming aware of it. And once you become aware of it, then you can, I don't even know how to describe this, but when you talk, I think it would help, Alexei, if you would, and you may not agree with me about this, but if you could just talk a little bit about that daily orbit, this part in your book.
Of course, yeah. I think we're at the same page already.
Yeah.
So basically, the easiest way to explain it is that earlier we were talking about how a harmonic is essentially a rotation in the fifth dimension. So when you do the delta wave, you have a certain diameter. When you do the alpha wave, you have a certain diameter. And so now you have your consciousness has a 24-hour circadian rhythm, right? And so when you make a map of your consciousness through the orbit of density, you see that it hits certain harmonics, certain regions at certain times of the day. And so basically that is when your conscious antenna, let's see if these pictures come out. So you have your delta is the biggest circle, and then it goes in, basically each layer is a different tuning. And so at certain times of the day, based off the circadian rhythm, you can basically estimate where your consciousness is while orbiting through density. And what I noticed is it actually resembles a gyroscope hanging on a string, because it does a huge loop, and then during alpha beta it does a tight loop, and then it goes back out and does a big loop. And so I thought that was kind of a really erratic orbit. But then I saw like this guy's Christmas lectures. He's like just playing with gyroscopes for hours and hours and hours. And he hangs that gyroscope on a string. And basically the orbit of consciousness through density is 100% like directly related to a gyroscope hanging on a string at a 90-degree angle.
But to bring that down to earthly terms, and so I'm a hammer and nail kind of guy, Chris. Okay, so I'm going to tell a little bit about my story and how I think I'm affected by this circadian, if I'm pronouncing it properly, cycle, where I feel like after so many years of this, I mean literally so many years, that I feel like that at some point during the day while we're asleep is the best time during this cycle. We're in tune with something different, right? I feel like I'm literally in tune with something, and I don't know what is it about 2:30 in the morning? What is that? What part of that cycle is that?
That is when 2:30 in the morning is when your brain transitions from a delta wave to a theta wave.
And it's just like, boom, awake, oh, they're gone. And that's exactly the thought that rushes through my head. There's no fear or anything like that. And then sometimes I can't put my finger on it. It's either before or after that I will have normal dreams. Like, I'm getting married to Britney Spears or whatever, all those kind of normal dreams. You're in the supermarket with your boxers on, all that kind of stuff. You see, and I don't know if it's me, but a slight warning to people: when you start getting really deep into meditation and I feel like it's kind of it kind of triggers something, and I'm not sure about this. Maybe I am just crazy.
I would think of it as working out, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it does.
Yeah,
okay.
It does.
Yeah, I'll say, I find all this really interesting. I'm not really sure what consciousness is, right? So when we talk about like the orbit of consciousness, I don't really know how to interpret that. But I think that, you make a good point, and like, meditation and stuff can definitely change how you experience things, and maybe you are tapping into something different. In this digital age, it does seem like we are all constantly distracted by our cell phones or whatever. And a lot of us don't have that time to quiet our minds, and most people, I think, don't. And I think that it's very valuable to do that.
Well, I feel like there's a way to harmonize the physical part of us with our consciousness, and maybe maybe on these days, maybe this period of the day or whatever, when our body's at a certain frequency, we have an opportunity to sort of tune in. It's like on AM radio, we used to tune in at a certain time of day, right? So we could get the signal better.
Exactly. Each one of those harmonics relates to a certain orbital, right? And so that's your consciousness literally flipping channels to theta.
Right? I have a question, Tony. So Tony, well, in the pilot world, so we know about this circadian rhythm. So from what I understand, it happens twice a day. So you have your highest temperature of your body is opposite that 2:30 time, right? So it's when your body's the slowest, it gets the coldest temperature, and then I think that's when possibly it goes to delta or theta waves. Your brain waves probably change, but it happens again, right? So you have a 2:30 around 2 a.m. and then it's 12 hours on the opposite. So it should be 2 p.m. as well. So when we started this, have you had any naps, I guess? Has it happened ever during the day at that other 2 o'clock time? I guess is my question. Could it be based on
I've never really taken naps during the day. I don't know. I know. I mean, I guess like most of us, you get that's the time of day you get grog. Like you'd be working in an office environment, right? You have to get a cup of coffee and have to take a mental break and get rejuvenated. I guess that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like that's why you have jet lag, because that circadian rhythm is set to a certain rhythm, and then when you change, it takes like a day, an hour is kind of how much it takes me to move my circadian rhythm. I was just curious if you had, if it was related to the other time you have a low point, or if it because for us there's 2 times your circadian rhythm gets lowest. Is my point. So that would just be one data point to see, does it happen some other time? Does it happen?
I think the time during the day, though, that you're conscious, your consciousness almost maybe interferes with the ability to tune in somehow. But I feel like that if I was going to be able to receive, I'll tell you, and the reason I think that some of this stuff is kept from the general public is because there's some real shocking, a shock effect to some of this stuff, and I believe some people would be mentally affected by it.
Is that the only you feel like a presence, or what? I
don't want to sound too crazy, but I have had either visions or hallucinations along with it. So not always, but sometimes. So, and I think I lost one wife over it. And
how many wives have you lost, Tom?
2. I've learned my lesson. So, and I feel like that maybe I'm just I don't feel like I'm nuts though. Okay, I have a normal life, but I feel like that some people. It's almost like be careful of what you search for. You might find it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Be careful, and I feel like that maybe possibly that a lot of things about reality that may have been discovered that maybe should be left unsaid. I don't know. You know what I mean? That's just I feel, and that sounds maybe crazy too, but I feel like that a lot of this stuff, talk to people who just absolutely don't want to know anything, right? They would be happy getting up in the morning, going to work, loving their kids, going to church, going to whatever, their friend's house for pizza, party, whatever, poker, going home, starting over and over again, right? Do you really want little gray guys running around in your day, messing up your life, your lifestyle, that kind of thing, I don't think so. I think I'm gonna say it's probably like 60 to 70% of the people would probably just be just fine without knowing anything at all.
Maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I was trying to be conservative, but
what's your impression then? So you don't think it's like you don't think it's a friendly force, I guess? Is there a belligerent nature or nefarious nature?
I don't. I think that our DNA includes instinctual, like right, just like animals have instincts. Obviously, I feel like there's been an instinct implanted in us that to fear this getting beyond a certain point of consciousness, and I believe that's why it's so easy for us to stay at a level of consciousness. But
to go with that, I think that we do have an instinct, right? But it almost gets diluted from the age of 2 or 3 when people start teaching you their perceptions of reality, like views on, cultural issues, things like that. And so we have these natural instincts, but then a lot of the instincts get muffled out by tradition or cultural views. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does to me. Yeah. But I just feel like that it's going to be, if there is some sort of disclosure that it's going to, I believe the early studies, done in the 50s were probably pretty accurate as far as how people would react. So, but I didn't want to dominate the conversation. I wanted to hear what your all's take was on dreams and how because it's obvious that our minds are creating these scenarios, right? But I kind of feel like that there's a melding of the physical and the consciousness at certain levels of our physical awareness. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and people don't even know why we dream, right? Like it's a mystery why we have to sleep or do anything. So yeah, it's some people think that maybe it's our instincts kind of replaying stuff and teaching us, trying to teach us how to react in certain types of situations that your mind makes up. But yeah, I don't know if anyone really knows what's going on in the dream world.
Well, we do know that certain physical things take place. Our body heals better when we're asleep, right? There are certain physical things that happen while we sleep that are different. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. We don't understand, or I don't understand how our brains work or how it's connected to our consciousness.
But it seems like do all animals sleep? I think all mammals sleep. But I think we know very little.
So I think it has a lot to do with, it's going to be a little far out there, but you could say free will, because we all have a golden spot, a natural place of manifestation within the universe. Like the universe naturally wants you to exist somewhere, but then you have wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations that will make you physically pace around your golden spot. And in a quantum nature, as you're pacing, you become cyclic. And so basically, when you sleep, what it does is it allows your manifestation to synchronize, because you let go of ego when you're sleeping. So you let go of your force in that direction. And so as you sleep, you literally synchronize to the naturally occurring light state of the universe. So I think the amount of sleep is dependent on how far off or how far away you are from your golden spot. And I think it has a lot to do with like resynchronization to the greater structure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense. It sounds great, but you have to sleep, right? I'm so curious to find out from Neuralink, because you have Elon Musk's new company, basically, where they're going to put in the little super thin metal wires. You know about this, Tony?
I have heard of it.
You can put a Fitbit into your brain.
Yeah, I've read things about Elon's goals. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they've proven that it works. Meaning, you can receive signals from the brain. They could read where like a pig's legs were going or supposed to be, and then now they'll try and transmit back into the brain, right, using those little tiny, super thin wires. And so, I'm very curious what's going to come out of that, because I think we're going to learn just an amazing amount, and then it'll be what's the physical manifestation of that, Alexei, or what would it look like? What are we going to find? What are we going to find when we actually know how the brain is working, how it works?
How will you experience it without being? Yeah. How will we be able to? Here's a good question for Rather. How will you document what happens while you're sleeping if you're not sleeping? just from signals from the brain?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the Chris brings up a great point with Neuralink, and there is technologies that are kind of like that aren't invasive. There's the transcranial magnetic stimulation, where they can essentially put big magnets into your head, and they can make you see specific things, and they can also hook up sensors to your brain, and they can almost like download images from your brain based on what you're seeing. So maybe we could hook up sensors to your brain, and you could go to sleep, and they could, like a VCR, record your dreams. Like that technology might be 5-10 years away.
There's a movie where they have the balls, and they're like reading these psychic dreams, and then they have like the future kills, like people being killed, and they like stop all murders from happening. You guys know what I'm talking about? I think it's
Minority Report, right?
Minority Report. Yeah, it's almost like that. Wow.
Well, but some of this is us having our cake and wanting to eat it too, okay? Because we're talking about all these physical things and how the brain can create these situations, but we don't want to say that's not happening until we observe it. You see, that's kind of KTU2 kind of stuff with me.
I mean, it gets down into the other question too of like, is any of this happening, right? That's kind of the Matrix thing, right? Are we just brains in a vat that think all of this is true? It's a pretty deep rabbit hole.
Well, if you think about that, Tony, you know, we could, like Rather said, you could wear like a helmet that reads your brain signals, right? So it's reading, it's coming from, it's basically able to read from outside of your brain the signals, right? So what if you could tap into some, or like a transmitter or receiver, like you mentioned, you know, it's like a super big helmet, you know, if you imagine, or when you sleep, you're able to like, you know, fall into this helmet state or something where you can transmit and receive signals.
I can see where it would take a while just to translate the signals, right? Because just because you're getting ones and zeros doesn't mean you know what they mean, right? So then it's going to be left up to translation, you know.
Yeah, I think currently these technologies, you really have to like calibrate it with each specific person. Like if you do a bunch of studies on someone, you can then tell, oh, they're thinking of a chair. But if you hook it up to you, Tony, and you know that same brain pattern won't mean a chair necessarily.
So the reason I brought all that up is because I kind of knew where all three of you would be coming from, and so you have to ask yourself at some point: are we? If some of what we're saying is true, why are these things not just being created out of our consciousness? But and right, and are we going through some sort of paradigm shift with human evolution? Because honestly, something you said earlier, Alexei, about free will is I was trying to allude to this earlier when I was talking about animals and their intellectual abilities or their instincts, right? Their intellectual abilities are
versus walking with love, right?
That their intellectual abilities are tied more to their instincts than ours are, right? Than humans are. And I believe that humans were created with this specifically in mind. Who created us, that we were going to be given this range of intelligence that animals don't have, right? You have people. I mean, honestly, like me, I have an average. I was B's and C's in school. I have an average. But then you have people like you three guys who have this, IQs that are probably 140, whatever, 130. So
ask any of us to build a house, Tony, and we will fall flat.
I could teach you that in a year, okay, rather. So I'm saying, and I haven't studied this, but animals don't have that broad of a range of intelligence, right? You don't have like dumb alligators that don't know to go catch something to eat it to survive, right? Or do you? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? I'm comparing the creation of our DNA with this free will. Really, what the free will amounts to is just a range of to me, just a range of available intelligences right. And some people were gifted. Like I feel like my son his name's Alex, and you have Alexei. I feel like some people, like Elon Musk, they were gifted with a broader range of intelligence than other humans. But I don't feel like that exists that much in nature. I think that's how humans are unique.
Do you think the animals participate though? So you're saying that they don't participate in the consciousness, like I can tell, when dogs, they're obviously dreaming, right? When their legs are kicking or they're chasing, you've seen the dogs dreaming.
I just don't think they have the same range.
The free will aspect.
Yeah.
Right? And that free will aspect is what allows us, or what actually allows us to choose to keep a baby alive that would normally probably die in the wild. Whereas you have animals that will just eat their babies because they have a broken leg or something.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat my neighbor's son because I think there's too many sons in the world.
Right.
I mean,
I'm not really even convinced that we actually have free will, right? Like consciousness could just be kind of an illusion and a story.
I'm going to end this right now. No.
There's only so far away you can go from like where you exist.
Well,
that's the whole stretching up view from your golden spot before you essentially just snap and pass away.
Yeah, but that's like saying like 40 something years ago when I had my little experience, I could have just wrote it off as a physical thing, and I could have kept believing. I could have kept my mind in the same right small spot in. I'm getting some feedback now. Are y'all? I thought I heard the YouTube side.
Yeah, there's a little bit of echo.
But yeah, I think you can decide, right? But once I started expanding that reality, I feel like that was a choice, I made. I'm sorry.
It's like the goggles you put on. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Well, I mean, I feel like that way with intelligence too. I don't necessarily think that. I think that a lot of what people think is intelligence isn't necessarily like innate biological intelligence. It's just all the experiences that you've had, and if you have the right experiences where you can draw different connections to other things, that kind of manifests in intelligence. But that's a product of where you've been and who you interacted with, not necessarily the biology of your brain.
Yeah, but we're still confirming things that Einstein said 40, 50 years later. So there are special. I mean, I feel like there are special people among us who have special abilities.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole like great person versus the time influencing people. Like if there wasn't an Einstein, there's some people would say that we wouldn't have relativity, we wouldn't have all these things. Other people would argue that there would be someone else who would pop up in that time frame who would then have all that at stake, would have made those connections. And I really don't know where I land on that argument either. I find both of them compelling.
I feel like that goes a lot along the lines of with your theory there, how when a certain cell dies, it's replaced by another one to take that position, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's basically, it's the organism. For whatever reason, that would be another question. Kind of two big points I don't really understand is why do we sleep? Or why do we have to sleep? All the animals, at least. And then the other one is why do you have cell death? So it seems like everything that, at least in nature, dies and then regenerates again. So it's basically brought back into existence. What's your take on that, Alexei? Because what is in your theory? Why would you have cell death and regeneration?
No, I mean, I honestly, I don't know if I've really thought that far into it. I just really liked when you, it was along the lines as what Rather was saying, where if Einstein didn't exist, it essentially would have replaced it.
To fill the
so
need.
Like,
yes.
We have this system, but like when one dies, another one needs to fill that void and take that role or that position, because the cell needs its certain parts in order to exist.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it seems like everything in nature is cyclical, right? You have the days, you have the hours, we have living, dying, right? Entropy, all systems break down over time, right?
But maybe it's easier to replace with a new system than it is to change an older system. So basically,
it gets to the point beyond
repair. I think what Alexei was saying is, my argument is that in a large organism, if you look at like, say, the U.S. 1947, if you think of that as one large actual living organism, Einstein, maybe he didn't exist, right? The idea is you would have had another cell that would have filled that void. Essentially, would have been there. It wouldn't have been Einstein. It would have been like Bill, and Bill's in there, but he's super genius because he's in the right place at the right time and fills all the right cell needs for the large organism. I don't know if it's required though.
And it could be that Einstein put a kink in things too, right? I mean, he could have slowed down the development of quantum mechanics or something.
That happened with Aristotle, right? Aristotle was so successful that they didn't look at any physics. They didn't do any first principle physics for like 2,000 years or something till the Renaissance, from my understanding. So if you're too successful,
you have to be smart enough to question. Right, like if you're so much smarter, then people can't even question what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
when Alexei's talking about, his orbiting consciousness,
We
or
can
when
do experiments.
time collides
But
with
see-
the universe collides with time. That's another one. I sit there. I'm just thinking about it so hard.
Yeah. Well, we just use some TMS, like Rather was saying, and then we can just start increasing our harmonics to 80, and then eventually get to 160 and then 320. And if we're experiencing new realms, well, hey,
But
Is
here's
that DTT or sorry.
but
I think
here-
DMT is 80.
yeah. Here's hope for people with average intelligence like me. Okay, when you hear, if you just attempt to make a point to delete normal societal things from your mind, from your consciousness, like politics and hate and all those negative things, and then you open yourself up to more broad ideas, and things will resonate with you. Like when I was reading, I'm always reading this stuff. When I was reading Alexei's book, things resonated with me. I didn't completely understand it, but it resonated because I was open to it. So what happens is once you find something that resonates with you, then you'll follow that path. It's like a homing, missile, following, that infrared signal or whatever, Chris,
Have you tried that, or it's been going on for 30 years? You said, what have you had any progress? Or
Well, I finally, the fear over time, the fear has lessened like a little bit by bit, and I'm learning. There's something in our DNA that really, and it's part of being an animal, that survival instinct, that the unknown is what creates the fear, right? So if you can get a handle on fear, then and the root of fear, then you can start. Then I can, I found that I've started to sleep better. I still wake up at 2:30, but it's just like, oh, okay, whatever, now go back to sleep. But
What do you think the root of fear is? I mean, I would say it has to do with death and pain, right? So when you realize that your consciousness is eternal and that you create the pain with your body and your mind, then there's nothing to fear. And then at that point, it's when you can walk into those dreams with, with amazing confidence and faith, and really, really take control of your dream. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You hear people who have near-death experiences, right? Who go and have these kind of transcendent experiences, and then come back, and then they aren't afraid of death anymore.
Right.
And that sounds pretty liberating. I still have that fear.
I think we all do to some degree, but to fully remove it, I think would be such a liberating experience.
I think the closer you get to believing that there is something after death, the less death worries you, And I think, how do I say this without sounding sacrilegious? If these beings turn out to be not very benevolent, it's because we were taught, to maybe believe there is something after death, because that sets up a moral code, right? Or that gives you the opportunity to set up a moral code, right? Morality, where you can say, okay, if you're a good person throughout your life, when you die, you get to go to the good afterlife. And if you are a bad person, you get to go to the bad afterlife, And so the fear, there is a percentage of fear in me that says there is nothing after. I'm just saying, okay, my Christian brothers, don't get mad at me. I'm saying there is a fear. It's a fear. It's not, I don't think it's that there is nothing after death, and that these thoughts were implanted in us to be, because maybe we were needed to create some mission on earth, for these non-benevolent beings. So that's like the other half of right. You have one theory that they're benevolent or whatever, and then the other theory is that they're not, and we're just being, we were created for some experiment or something, right? So
radio
I guess
tags. Yeah.
What's that?
the tags in your leg or in your left butt, you know.
Yeah.
The guy who pulled out that that RF tag. It's weird.
So I don't know. That's why I invited y'all so you could help me figure this out.
Well, you know, from the model I have drawn up or whatever, basically, as you have your near-death experience, your brain hits that 80 hertz, right? And that's when people, as well as with DMT trips, they're experiencing the elves, the angels. And so the way I see it is you're literally interacting with the next layer of time, you know, towards I call the Noviverse, the Nova scene, in that other book. So like you're moving into the next dimension of life, essentially. Consciousness is eternal. Like you hit that 80 gamma state, you leave your body, then you just go into that next, you know. And from the way I've seen it, I've related it to dreams. Like when you go to sleep, based on your light state harmony at the moment of your conscious shift, is what will determine your next experience. So like if you go to sleep sad and you're gonna have sad dreams, you go to sleep happy, you'll have happy dreams. And so I don't know if it has necessarily to do with being a good or a bad guy, more so to be being whole with yourself and who you are. You know, like have forgiveness in yourself and just really love yourself. And that's when you'll, you know, light state harmony and stuff jumps into play. But
What's the 80 gamma? So how do you relate that? You're talking about, what is it? It's the drug. What is it? DMT?
DMT?
GMT. Okay.
Yeah, so that takes your consciousness to an 80 hertz. And when you hit that 80 hertz is when you have the out-of-body experience. And so when people have near-death experiences, that's literally the chemical that's released into the pineal gland and into other parts of the body. And everybody has these out-of-body experiences. And so it's like at 80 hertz, I don't think it has to do with DMT so much as being at 80 hertz. But at 80 hertz, you have out-of-body experiences. And so when we talk about the different shifts in consciousness, you know, delta is a certain sleep state, theta is a sleep state, alpha beta is our awake state, fast gamma is our out-of-body conscious state, and that relates to the realm of angels, and it relates to the realm of elves. And so when you look at the overlapping of conscious types within that greater structure of time, you could say that we just keep moving more inward and inward towards denser experiences. So I wouldn't say that the beings are bad or good, because, you know, here on Earth we have good and bad people in quotes, you know, and then I would say that they're also good and bad in the Noviverse and also the lower verse, which would be the life before this one.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make a claim either way. I was just stating the
But
thought,
these
kind of
beings
thought process.
Sorry, going back to Rather's point though. So could these be these things that we're seeing, right? So could other dimensions be seeing us as appearing like these things into their dimension? Does that make sense? I guess, could it be you have a reverse, maybe like when Tony's dreaming, he's really like there with the wolf people, you know?
That's
And
what it
they're
feels
like
like.
seeing,
What's that ape doing there?
yeah, they
That's
see
it. I
Tony,
get it.
they see you know, a bearded ape who walks on 2 feet out in the woods. You know, are they seeing that?
He was asking you a
I'd say
question.
yes.
Alex.
My answer is yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. The thing is that if you see it, kind of, I feel like it's all a big contradiction. Okay, because you just, and I feel like, Alexei, you kind of dodged the DMT thing because you're like, nah, you don't need DMT. Once you reach it, right? But if you do, but you can reach it by using the dimethyl, whatever, tryptamine, whatever DMT is.
Ayahuasca, all the native, you know, the shaman type do that.
Right. So that's a physical thing, though. It's not a spiritual thing. Right.
It's a physical thing that induces harmony within your brain, right? So I don't know. I guess the way I think of it is that at the end of the day, ultimately, it's your brain vibrating at 80 hertz that's interacting with the 80 hertz realm. But maybe it is, you know, related to the molecules. I really don't know.
I guess I keep going back and forth to this. You know, we're creating reality. if it's that physical, then the brain, the brain is creating that reality, not, or your perception of that reality, right? It's not that I'm just creating it just from dreaming up I'm not dreaming up the matter. It's right.
Yeah, Tony. So you're saying that, well, when we're awake, right, our brains are perceiving the natural world, or what we see as the natural world, right? So we're not creating the matter, is what you're saying, right? As we walk around in the real world. But when you're dreaming, it sounds like you're saying kind of the same thing. Whereas normally when I dream, I actually have anxiety dreams, where I'm flying around. Usually it's like a random plane, like an F-35, and then I forget how to land. I've never flown an F-35, but I'm like flying around. I'm like, in my dream, I'm like, oh, this is a great plane. Yes, super advanced. And then I have to land, and I like freak out, and I have these anxiety dreams. It's weird. Or I go out there and I forget my checklist. But I think my brain's not perceiving a real event, right? But maybe like this other dream, this is just a theory again, is maybe you're able to tune into another frequency, I think is what Alexei is saying, and actually tune into another maybe observational universe. I mean, it seems like a stretch.
Yeah, because honestly,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Alexei. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I mean, I was thinking, again, like the seed crystal aspect of it. So you have a light state harmony, which is your seed crystal. And then as you change harmonics, you're literally seeding that new realm. So you are creating.
Yeah, I'll say, Chris, I'm glad that we're living in the universe where they did not just throw you up in an F-35 and not teach you how to land. So this is a better universe.
I think it's probably very easy, actually.
What I choose to observe, what I choose.
Now, but see, imagine you've had that dream, right, Chris?
Yeah.
And say you had that, not knowing it, you had it at 1:30 in the morning, okay?
Yeah.
And then, bam, you're wide awake, and you're saying, "Oh, there was a presence there just now, but it's not there." In other words, you sensed it. Your instincts told you as an animal that there was a presence there. And so back in the day when I was meditating more heavily, there would be there would be a vision of something, right? And most of the time it was just like this robot kind of spidery thing, that alien looking thing, right? And that's the one I lost my first wife with. But as I started suspecting that maybe I should come off of this weirdness I was getting into, and that I was opening up some sort of rabbit hole I didn't want to go down, that sort of has tapered off now, right? So I kind of feel like that I feel like the physical world is coexisting with this possibility that you can enter, and I kind of feel like that. I don't know how to describe it, to be honest with you. I believe in the physical world, but I believe that humans are able to, through their physical bodies, plus their consciousness. It's an equation, right? Physical brain plus the consciousness plus this time, squared equals this. Rather, I'll have to figure that out.
Well, I mean, what you're describing in your sleep sounds kind of a bit like sleep paralysis, right? And that's kind of like a common way for people to kind of explain away this stuff. But I'm thinking maybe there's something to sleep paralysis. Maybe you are.
I've never experienced sleep paralysis where you couldn't move, because I've got hundreds of videos of where I think I'm like, okay, I'm going to get you on camera tonight, right? And I'll grab my phone, and I have these videos, nothing there. It's that's what makes you think you're crazy, right? So I kind of feel like I'm not crazy, and I feel like that maybe more people experience this, but they just don't want to talk about it. It's probably like a lot of things, but I think part of the problem is that our physical bodies are limited. I bought this camera. It's over there in my camera bag. I told you about this, where it's been altered to be able to see a full spectrum, infrared available light plus infrared from 700 to 1200 nanometers, right? It's the near IR. And just because this phone can't see something doesn't mean it's not there, right?
Or just because your eyes can't see something.
Just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But that doesn't mean there's not some other way that our instincts allow us, like animals, are eating, catabear. What's that big rodent in South America? I have this vision of them eating grass. All of a sudden they pop up, and it's like in the wild America, the animals way off a mile away, but they're like, wait, there's something in the woods. It's kind of like that.
I just want to throw in a point about that camera. The little thing I picked up is it also helps to have an infrared flashlight.
Oh, I got one.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then
it's in the camera bag.
It's the reaction of the infrared as well. So you light it up with the flashlight, and then it's easier to see in the cameras, right? Because they'll only be emitting so much energy. So when you use an infrared flashlight, it actually helps illuminate the shot.
What's funny is I was making this back. I don't know if y'all saw the background image where I had Bob Lazar sign this poster thing that he drew, the sport model, I talked to him on the phone one time, and I was like, "Hey, can you?" Because he has a company called United Nuclear, right? So he signed this thing for me and sent it to me, and I was reading his little notes in there on like on technical drawings. You have the notes or whatever, and it said that basically he was claiming that it something that they did in what prevented it from being seen on the infrared spectrum, or that it didn't emit IR light or something. So I'm wondering if these beings are actually purposely, when we see them, if they're not purposely allowing us to see them, right? Instead of, otherwise we can't. They're just right.
I'm not kind of default position as we almost certainly are being visited by aliens from other planets if space travel is at all possible. I think the real question is, would we be able to perceive them or see them at all? Kind of like you're saying, if they have the technology to get here, they could probably have metamaterials that will bend light, or maybe they're even just incredibly small beyond our ability to see. And if we do see them, I agree with you. They're probably letting us see them.
I have this funny thought that they're in their little ship, and they're taking one of those IR flashlights and they're shining it at us so we can see them. Otherwise, we couldn't see them. I know that's just.
I always think like the Far Side. Do you remember those? The Far Side comic, or do you ever watch those, Tony? Where he writes and the cows are being like. Taken by UFOs or something. I think we kind of live in that world. It's like the Far Side world of the aliens.
Is that the little cartoon? Was that the one with the cavemen?
Yeah, they have cows or cave guys.
Yeah.
Little T-shirts, right? A whole bunch of shirts, like Far Side T-shirts.
Do you have a trifold emitter, Tony? Have you checked your body or anything for any weird transmissions?
No, I don't. I don't want to get. I have to be a little.
No.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just I have to be a little careful. I mean, there's a lot of issues, right? There's with this kind of stuff, right? Because maybe we'll talk off the air about some things, but I feel like I have to stay going down some sort of tempered road, that I don't want to get going down too many rabbit holes, right? What I want to hear is what Lou knows, what Chris Mellon knows, what I mean. I want to know what these guys know, and then before I would, go down some kind of rabbit hole like that. But y'all got quiet all of a sudden. Well, did we go down? How many rabbit holes did we go down? Let me look at my. Do y'all have anything that you want to, or questions or comments? Or?
Yeah, I just want to say, Chris, your dark matter video and stuff. The tragedy that happened the other day with the Travis Scott, concert is horrible, right? But one of the interesting things about that was all these pictures that we see of like crowds, large crowds, and how they literally move like water, and it really reminded me of your video and how we might just be maybe America is an organism and we're all just little parts of it. And seeing things like that, waves and crowds really made me think that hey, you might be onto something there.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think that would be the way forward, is seeing if there's any parallels between current physiology, how have we evolved into the past, and then now can we make those same examples for higher dimensional levels, like you just mentioned. Like, that's a great point. Is if you get to some higher level, do people actually, is there a viscosity of people? If you look at traffic, think of traffic under arterways. Is that just like LA is just having a heart attack? There's not just, if you looked at LA, the resources and nutrients probably can't get to where they need to go, like 30% of the time or something. It's just so crowded. So
I mean, I love the idea of traffic jams being like heart attacks. That
it's
is
like
great.
a heart attack.
I mean, it is, yeah. Arteries being clogged.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
that means we're all plaque then, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think for Elon Musk, is that if you think about the actual Earth, Musk has been saying we need to go with tunnels, but it seems like that would be like the far future, is basically the whole Earth is kind of filled in. Maybe it is, with life already. Yeah. Sorry, Alexei, I cut you off.
Oh no, I just really like that whole life goes in, life goes out, right? And so when you look at the the dark matter web over time, it essentially looks like a cardiovascular system, right? And when you think about our experience being in a giant vortex, like we're essentially in a giant one black hole. And then when we look out into the universe from our experience, we see black holes. So it's like energy is funneling from one system into another and growing toward, like, fractaling out to different experiences. I just find it absolutely fascinating with like the bigger structure and how the dark matter web might tie into the black hole system of that 6-dimensional structure.
Cool.
I guess that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I had one thought kind of related to that, was if you look at the solar system, if you look at Earth, so basically we're polar. If you think about it, we're a water planet. So water is inherently polar. So we have a plus and minus, and you see it has flipped, right? If you look back, and the magnetic charge of the Earth has flipped. So I was thinking, what if could the solar system be, a similar structure? You kind of mentioned consciousness before, like consciousness comes about at our level, the delta wavelength level, essentially. But maybe you have certain repeating structures, right? So in the solar system, could it be similar to maybe not similar, but related to like an atom, where you have electrons that are changing polarities, or would that structure repeat, right? So is our solar system, is that like, it has 8 planets, so maybe that's like 8 proton molecules or something,
right? Like we live
does
in
that relate? Is there some relationship we can see?
Right?
Yeah, so what I would expect to see as we start finding more, as we start getting more information about other solar systems, does the layout resemble our own? Is it laid out the same, or are there similar kind of molecules, if you will?
Right.
Well,
you have like the single star system and the binary star system would already be like the first 2 major examples of that. But then I know you're saying, like, how many gas giants exist? How far away is the gas giant? Like, what state is that system in? Like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, to see if there are repeating structures, or as you zoom out, could it be related?
Does a galaxy resemble that? Right. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I saw earlier. I didn't fly I flew the block 30, 25, 40, and 42, and 50. 50, yeah.
And you knew how to land that, right?
I was never a wild weasel. I never did. That mission was so cool. As a suppression of enemy air defense. I never did that one. It's the block 50, block 52. So no, I didn't fly that one.
I just read, I don't know if y'all saw this, but I read this article just recently about we just found a system, I think it's only like 150 light years away, where it has, habitable planets are in the Goldilocks zone that are revolving around the equatorial plane of the star, right? But it also has a couple that are revolving around at its poles. Did you see that, rather?
Yeah, I think it was like the first time that they saw something like that, right?
Yeah. You made me think of that, Chris, to ask you if you'd seen that.
No,
I
I hadn't.
think that's the first time we've observed that.
I mean, when we talk about other solar systems, it's also interesting to think about, what if there was a habitable planet out there that was, spinning 10 times as fast as us, so their day is 10 times faster, and they their whole system might be 10 times faster. They might be like superhumans to us, moving faster than we can possibly see, just because of the environment that they grew up in, right?
Yeah, I mean, our senses are a product of the environment that we evolved in, right? As far as scientific view, like, so you have different planet, different harmonic resonance as far as like night day, right? That's pretty cool.
But that kind of goes along with what I was thinking, when I was thinking there's an overall structure of the universe, and you have different solar systems that have different environmental issues, issues where they're operating at different speeds, or what I mean, different. But yet they're still a part of this larger fabric of the universe, right? And they just interact with it differently,
Yeah, the idea is each solar system would make up another atom in just a larger structure.
Yeah, that would tie into what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I ultimately ended up calling it the crystal of time, because it's like we're in a giant crystal, and based off of our accelerative reference frame through it is how what's being stretched and what's being crunched.
Because a crystal is fractal, right? Each part of a crystal is the same or symmetric to the rest of it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I more meant like, based on the way you just described is pretty good too. As a crystal cools, like the grain size changes radially. But what I was more referring to was how there's a crystalline structure, and that we're kind of just orbiting around the center of it. And so atoms are galaxies, but it's just based off of our accelerated reference frame. And I mean, what is the difference between matter and light, right? It all comes from this singular energy, ultimately. So I like the whole crystal idea.
But how do we justify this? Because we know that on the quantum level, gravity, right? Things don't really behave the same, right? So it's not completely scalable, right?
Yeah. I had an idea for that, Tony, was just like refractions through a pool. When light goes through, when it changes mediums, right? So light's coming into a pool and it's going this angle, but when it comes out, it goes out a different angle, right? Or any lens.
Refraction or whatever.
Yeah. So I just had a thought for, it's not that the quantum world is necessarily so different from ours. It's just, again, just a speculation. Maybe it's just that we're looking through so many different levels of space time. We're looking into a different dimension. Just like when we look up, I'm trying to describe to Alexei about the size of the universe, and a solar system could be the size of an atom, but maybe it is all vibrational. And it's just that we happen to be looking into a different dimension that it looks so big, if that makes sense. So just like there's a window, we're looking through a window.
So fractalized by the time it gets to us. I get what you're saying. Yeah, 100%.
Either that, or maybe we're not batching it properly. In other words, those quarks and muons are part of our system, but as part of that system, then it's scalable. Does that make sense? It's like groups. It's like in CAD. I can take different geometry and create a group out of it, right? Then I can move that group around, and I can edit it. That's kind of its own entity. Maybe the quantum field is part of our scale of existence. Maybe that's a group, and then that group exists inside of the bigger group, which still could be scalable, but we just don't. Maybe the batching of it is what we're not understanding. That makes sense. That means each group could have its own quantum level that doesn't have to be right?
Yeah, I mean, that ties in with the book Time Atom, where I talk about grains of consciousness. And so almost every single clique, or group of people has their own grain that they exist within, and that there's environments in between that don't allow for proper harmonizing of the different environments. And so I don't know, it goes along with what you were saying, I think, as far as the grains of consciousness that may exist.
Hey, Alexei, how would you describe the quantum effects, or what's your guess or speculation on why we see, discrete quantum packets, etc.?
Well, I mean, I think the discrete quantum packets has everything to do with there is a flow of energy of space. There's a flow of time right around that greater center vortex, and it clearly goes from 0 to 20 with a perfect, hitting every single point. There is no gap. But when it comes to perception, it has to do with the relationship of your conscious antenna, and so your ability to actually harmonize with the certain flows, because you're not going to harmonize with, if you're tuned to 20, you won't really harmonize to 15. I'm just using generic numbers. And so you have discrete packets because those are the discrete frequencies that you're tuned to. And that doubling nature is related to the 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, because the humans have that binary doubling nature. And so when you think about the human consciousness in relationship to a manifesting universe, there should be that relationship. For everything that we're able to perceive, it should have a doubling nature, a relationship at least, to our conscious orbits. So for beta, which orbits 20 hertz, you'd probably pick up on orbits around the center of time that would be factors of 20 hertz. Because they would be vibrating within that sphere. That's the way I see it right there.
It sounds like it's vibrational. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the analogy that, you have a machine that has all these different working parts, right? We can still pick that whole machine up with a forklift and move it around. It may be the things we're observing on a quantum level are just part of our machine, the human machine, or, our existence, and that whole machine is then scalable.
I think this drawing will help explain what I was trying to say a little bit better. But basically, so you have the rings of perception, and on the inner side is where the energy is orbiting the fastest, and on the outer side is where the energy is orbiting slower. And so those two, that whole vortex adds as a field of energy. And then you have your conscious antenna as it gyroscopically processes through the fluid of time, harmonizes with the different layers of reality. That's more what I,
And so, closer. So higher frequencies would be closer, and that would be, is that smaller in size?
Exactly. And so that's when you get to the atom, right? So time atom is literally the center. As you get smaller in those rings of perception, you get to the atom size, where the atom is a universe. And
Does it end though? It goes all the way to.
On mine, I just have it
strings.
Yeah, it just keeps going and going. But I think science would say it's like the Planck scale. I really don't know though. I think it just keeps going forever to infinite. But we don't quite understand what infinity is, right?
Yeah.
But it's like creating that long string of cheese in the factory. You can cut it off in pieces, right? So that doesn't mean that. I guess. Well, I feel like you were. The question you were asking a while ago, Chris, about whether the things at the quantum level just appear to be organized differently, whether they are or not, just because of the way we observe them, right?
Yeah, maybe it's not different. If you talk about, you hear these accounts, right, where the ship just materializes out of nowhere. Is it coming from a smaller, is it coming from another dimension, or it's just small getting big? I don't know. Does anyone say it actually looks like it's expanding into some place, or is it materializing? That'd be my question. That would lend credence, if the ship, it comes out of a point and all of a sudden there's a ship there. I just wonder, are these balls of light? Is this ball of light, is that actually interdimensional kind of, could that be some sort of portal or something?
Brother,
Yeah,
is that,
well,
is that
I love
something they
that question.
see?
What's that?
Is that something they see at the Skinwalker Ranch? Like literally a magnetic vortex with like.
They definitely see portals and stuff. I don't know if they see them expanding from a small point or not, but I love that analogy too, because the Planck length, the smallest length that we talk about, is actually just the smallest length that we could like actually look at. Because if we tried to get light small enough to go beyond that Planck length, that's as you get your light wavelength smaller, that's higher energy. So we'd essentially be like creating a black hole if we tried to shine light into such a small space to observe it. So the Planck length is really just the limitations of our ability to look into that small area. It doesn't mean that that's we have actual, concrete specific time steps or space steps. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, there might be a infinity amount of points beneath the Planck length that life could strive on. And if that was true, these would be like really high energy beings, right? Because they would be operating at these really high wavelengths, frequencies, like you're saying, Alexei, and they could potentially lower their energy levels and come out to our world.
Can you all hear the vacuum cleaner?
No.
No, thank you.
Well, that goes into the whole. I don't know if you've ever heard the idea of a stupa. It's like I think it's more of like Indian type of mythology, but basically through your stillness, you create quantum flows that literally, consciousness evolves through your stillness, right? And so you create the laminar flows, and basically you can like manifest your own physical structure because it evolves to the point where it creates technology and can literally jump into your space-time. So through stillness, you create intelligences. So I feel like the stupa has something to do with the whole nature of it, right? Especially Skinwalker Ranch, where I don't know, all speculation.
What is it about the Sandia Mountains? That's what I want to know, right? Because there's several different people who claim to have these experiences in that area, that part of the country, right? You have the Sue Walker lady that I interviewed, who has her claims. She's in communication with. You have Angelique, the lady who says she has visited them in their sub, inside the mountain, their base, and she's going to take another, field trip with some people and go in there. I mean, it's kind of funny about that part of the country. How it seems to be a magnet. Is Skinwalker Ranch located? Does anybody know if it's located near the Sandia Mountains or in that area?
I think the Uinta Basin of Utah. I'm not sure if there's mountains nearby or not.
Oh, Skinwalker Ranch is in Utah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's not. Okay. Sorry, that was a random thought. Oh.
Yeah, I can't type. Yeah, there's crazy stories in there. And the Skinwalker. Yeah, that was Onswap, however you say that. Very interesting book, Tony. If you haven't read the book, man, if you're in UAP interested, you basically have to read it. It's unbelievable.
What's the name of the book?
Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
Oh, that book. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You must have. Did you mention the author's name?
Lekatsky, and then George Knapp. There's a third.
Oh,
author.
George Knapp was involved.
Yeah, he was a part. He's a contributing author.
For some reason, I look at him as someone who's very reputable. I don't know why. I just get that feeling.
Yeah, he's a news guy. He's been covering this for decades now. He's broken a lot of stories.
Didn't he break the Bob Lazar? Didn't he?
Yes. Yeah. That was George Knapp.
Yeah.
But Bob Lazar's been kind of, I don't know, seems discredited or something in the UAP community. So I don't know. You talked with him, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I grew up with all this stuff, right? I'm 59, so I've been at the time in the era of Bob Lazar, he was looked at like a sort of a George Knapp or somebody, right? It's only now, to me, this is my perception, right? It's only now that, and it's funny how social media picks their winners and losers in this game. And I never had really figured out how they decide who they're going to cancel and not cancel. And I still don't understand Bob Lazar. I don't understand, because he's always seemed to me, I don't have some special gift or anything, but I feel like I can read people fairly well. He doesn't seem like he's never really gained anything. Like he hasn't gained that much, right? He still has this little company called United Nuclear, where he creates chemicals and mineral, or molecular level things for different companies. It's not like he got, really wealthy, rich off of this, but he's maintained the same story ever since. And if you go back and look at the things that he said, there's not that much difference between the things that he has claimed and the people who are making claims at Skinwalker Ranch. But for some reason, dino beavers have more clout than, Bob Lazar. And that's the bizarre thing about all this to me.
Yeah, I think that there are some questions about, his education history and some other, details of his story which seem like they should be verifiable, but they aren't. But yeah, I don't think that totally discredits him. My kind of personal hypothesis is that he was probably working, as a contractor in the area, and maybe some actual insider maybe gave him information. Potentially, he was parroting those stories. So I don't know if that's true or not. I think that there's probably some kernel of truth. I don't know how big that kernel necessarily is.
Some of the videos I remember seeing were of him actually inside the lab. What was the lab that he worked at?
S4.
Well, there was another lab. I forgot.
Los Alamos.
I guess all I'm saying is, at the time, you see, it's just a matter of, to me, some of the stuff is about timing and how people's perceptions, right? And because, like I say, back in the day, Bob Lazar was, considered, if in ufology, I remember him being respected, or at least someone who was sort of, and then when the whole, element 151 thing came into existence, that, to me, that, I don't know. I'm not a scientist like Rather, but it seems kind of bizarre that
how's the cloud chambers, Rather? Last time when I was on UCR with you, Rather had just built a cloud chamber over the weekend. Any particles? It's still picking up.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you create one of these, essentially you create like a cloud of alcohol vapor, and then when the background radiation, which is present all around us, goes through, you see the literal trails of the atoms and the protons that are going through the sky, which is incredible. I would love to see something like this at Skinwalker Ranch, and see if there are, put it by your head, see if there's weird particles coming in and trying to influence you. It's really cool being able to see the invisible.
Now you're seeing the results of those particles hitting the fog, or
as they go through the alcohol vapor, they I guess ionize the cloud or something, and create a trail of the vapor to kind of condense behind it.
But you don't see the particles. But you don't ever see any sort of there's never any light. There's not enough energy from those to give off any sort of light, like if you say infrared light.
I don't think so. You have to shine a physical light on there to kind of see these trails. But it's cool. You see these weird spider webby kind of things that's happening all around us, and we don't know.
I didn't know if you'd ever tried to take an image of that happening with an IR camera, to see if there's any difference.
That'd be interesting.
Use a different gas that literally has the alpha particle difference as far as the electron voltage and the jump, right? So instead of using alcohol gas, you use some type of, I don't know exactly which gas it would be, but whenever the alpha would hit it, it would light up, right? There was the exact electron voltage needed for the shell jumps. Just a thought,
Yeah, no, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
You need to make some of these and sell them, Rather, so I can buy one from you.
But it's still going. You still see all the particles. How many particles a day, or how does it work?
Yeah. So it's not like an ongoing thing. Like you have to have a dry ice bed and place a metal plate on top of that dry ice, to get the alcohol to get into that state where it can be ionized by the trail. So it's I don't really run it constantly. I just kind of set it up, and it's a really fun, cool experiment to set up. It takes $20 of equipment, and then you can set up this little chamber and see stuff. So I don't do it all the time. I just kind of did it to visualize it. I recommend people do it. It's fun to do.
That's how we found radioactive, right? That's how we proved there were radioactive materials? Didn't they have those cloud chambers on weather balloons up high? And that's what.
Yeah, probably. And that's also how they found the positron, like the antimatter pair of the electron. So there are these crazy collisions that just happen naturally, like happening in CERN, that happens in our atmosphere, and it creates things like antimatter, like positrons that are zooming around us, and we can, they were able to, you put a magnet by this cloud chamber, you can see how these particles deflect with their trails, and that's how they found the positron. They found, what, this is going the opposite direction as it should, and the only explanation was that it was antimatter.
Yeah, so there you go, Tony. It's like a radiation we couldn't see. Maybe you're able to tap into some frequencies that we can't tap into, while I'm out just anxiously not being able to land, you're out getting probed by some alien.
You just have to hit the autopilot button. Well, the cloud chamber, what was that invented in the early 18th century? When was the first one?
It's either like the 1920s or 1950s. I
thought it was earlier than that, which is, I was going to say it's pretty impressive. I think just the idea of it.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Just a heads up, I've got about 10 minutes left before I have to head out.
Well, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can always tell when the conversation is winding down, but I don't want it to, but I can always tell.
Well, have you figured it all out?
1920 and 1950 were cloud chambers. They played a prominent role in experimental particle physics from the 20s to the 50s until the advent of the bubble chamber. So maybe you need one of those next year.
Yeah. I think that might go beyond my DIY skills.
Or neutrino.
I have to get you in for that, Tony.
Turn the glass beaker upside down, right? Have the gas floating up inside.
Bumble chamber, yeah, it'll capture your dreams. It's the future.
Now, see, you all are doing the same thing. I'm in this community on the YouTube where we have these hangouts, and the first video I made, the first interview I did, the next time I went in there, they were like, "Oh, how's you seen any UFOs lately?" So it's kind of funny how people wondered how it was so easy to keep these things a secret for so long. It's because there's such a taboo and around it that you're kind of treated like a crazy person, if you talk about it. So I don't know. It's one of those things. But so I'll be hearing about it some more now.
Stigma is real, unfortunately.
It is real. It's not, and until you experience it, it's a bizarre feeling. You feel like a leper or an outcast or something, But
I think, there was all these particles spinning through the air that we couldn't see, right, till we were able to detect them with this cloud chamber. We're undoubtedly going to have new systems that come out. With 100%, like I promise, there will be systems
what else is out there
that pick up things that we didn't know before. They're going to detect new things that we didn't consider, like 100%. But everybody's thinking like, yeah, we've got everything.
Yeah. I think the Galileo project might be doing that. Here's hoping.
Yeah, you would think we would hear more out of the Hadron Collider too. We rarely hear anything about any kind of new discoveries. But once a year we might hear something.
But yeah, there's not much into consciousness. There seems like there's this huge kind of non-scientific movement into meditation and consciousness. But then the mainline science, I don't know, doesn't seem too interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's something intangible, right? Like it's the invisible, right? Yeah, maybe we can someday get a cloud chamber or something that could detect our consciousness emanating out, and who knows?
Because you can pick up the signals, right? I mean, you just need just a helmet, you know. So some information
Yeah.
is transmitting out. Right?
Tinfoil hat. That's all you need.
There's some information.
I was just going to say, it'd be fun to actually map the quantum orbits, right? Because my drawing just shows a single point, all of our energy going around a single point, which would just show a couple fields of energy. But in reality, you probably have a whole bunch of multiple centers, and each one of those is responsible for each particle that we experience, like the alpha particle maybe coming from a different orbit near us. And so, oh man, I forgot what I was getting at, but basically it'd be really cool to map that quantum world. And I think the answer comes through gyroscopes, because they want to synchronize to the precession, right? So by using the precession of gyroscopes, I think we can map the quantum world. And you'd have to use like different densities of gyroscopes and different makeups of gyroscopes. And based on how they orbit, you'd be able to see the flows of space. I just feel like that's another next step as far as the conscious connection to the quantum world.
I think gyroscopes are huge too, Alexei, because if you look at momentum, you know, if you're going this way, right, you have a velocity vector. Basically, you've moved positions, right? You've actually changed positions. But if we spin something now, right, your momentum doesn't actually, you know, it stays in the same position. You're basically building up momentum. That's where I was thinking maybe you could use some sort of gyroscope to create those magnetic vortexes. You kind of mentioned it, like it's Skinwalker.
Yeah,
maybe there is like a. So could you spin a magnet like a gyroscope or something enough to build up so much inertia?
Yeah, I mean, I find it so fascinating. Like, because your consciousness is like a gyroscope orbiting through the fluid of time, right? And so that shows how the fifth dimension creates our four-dimensional perception. And so when you're forcing precession on the gyroscope, you'll notice that it'll rise relative to the gravitational field. And the way I explain it is it's literally drifting outwards in the fifth dimension of density. So it's not that it loses mass, but it's literally in a less dense realm. It's being manifested in a less dense realm because you've pushed it faster in its orbit, so it drifts outward, right? And when you slow precession, it wants to fall. And so that's like density control is with gyroscopes by forcing and relieving precession.
I see. Yeah, because the faster and longer it spins, it builds up more density or maybe momentum. Is that kind of the thought?
Well, just like it's hard to describe, but like when you spin a gyroscope, right? And every gyroscope has their own orbit of precession. And when you relate that to consciousness, basically you see, well, the reason it might be orbiting that way is because of a fifth dimensional synchronization of the incoming quantum state. So it's like literally the matter that's creating that gyroscope, it's trying to synchronize, but because it's spinning, it's like, oh, I don't know if I should be here or there. And so you lose momentum because you're literally twisting up your light state. But like when it comes to losing mass and being able to rise, it has to do with position within that 5D crystal. And so when you force, like a satellite, if you make a satellite go faster, it'll drift outward. If you slow it down, it drifts inward. So when you force precession of a gyroscope, it's almost like the opposite effect is happening. You're making it drift outward in the field of density. And so it causes the gyroscopes to rise. It's just something I find like extremely fascinating. Like there is a direct relationship between those two right there.
Huh. Cool. Yeah, I thought kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's hard to be the host with Alexei here because my mind starts drifting down these. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm the host. I'm supposed to say something.
Your own gyroscope is
Well, and what's the energy in a gyroscope, right? It's the energy of synchronization with the light state. And so when it comes to like an orbit, right, you say E equals MC squared, and then you can also, so basically you have a universe orbiting the center of time. The way I like to think of it is that the energy in matter is directly related to the gravitational field. So that would be like the direction towards the center of time. But then there's also a tangential velocity associated with it. And so that would be like 1/2 mv squared. But because you know your distance is a equals to v squared over r. So basically you can then say that your energy associated with tangential velocity is 1/2 mcr. And so you can literally get more energy out of synchronizing a gyroscope with the light state than you can by turning matter to light. if that theory is true, right? So there's like a lot of energy with over Unity systems when they don't let the gyroscope rise. They force precession, but they don't let the gyroscope rise. It starts banging and smashing the machine to bits. The bigger your radius of precession gets, the greater the energy gets.
And is that why the Searle generator rises? Is
I
that
want to say it's directly related to gyroscopic precession of the electrons, but I don't know. You know, yeah.
That's cool. All new stuff, man. I just heard this theory last week, so it's still very cool.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to rewatch this interview to pick up some of the finer points here. But very interesting.
What's funny about me is, I'm a nuts and bolts guy. I like to build things, and I keep thinking, okay, what can I take of something Alexei says and build something with it? That's a challenge for you.
Yeah, let us know if you figure that out.
Give me a project to build.
I think some gyroscopes might be fun and some magic squares, and just go to town with those. But yeah, I'll send you some drawings. Let's see what happens.
I want to put them in SketchUp. I want you to send me some sketches, and I'll put them in SketchUp.
Build something.
Do you take what is it, the Rhino files?
DWG.
Yeah, it'd be what would it, it's not DWG. That'd be like AutoCAD, right?
DXF, STL.
I can do the STL. I'll send you one of those.
Yeah, STL files. Yeah.
I'll draw something like fun up, but I will talk about it next time. But yeah, I got STL or whatever.
See, you made me start up SketchUp. I was going to look at the import. I shouldn't be doing that as the host. That should be. So you're starting up SketchUp. Well, guys, I wanted to. I know we've been 2 hours. I got to go. They're closing the shop. They're going to turn the internet off. I appreciate it, Alexei. I was kind of hoping maybe sometime we could get together again and maybe talk about some different subjects I want to talk about. But this is very, very therapeutic for me, guys. And I really appreciate you all coming on. And thanks, Rather. I've had these two guys before. They've been through the punishment, pain, and suffering before.
Thanks for having me. It's a really fun talking. Thanks, Alexei.
Yeah,
nice
good seeing you again, Rather. Yeah.
Good seeing you, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Tony. Thanks for sharing, man. No, I make joke, but it's not a joke. I appreciate it.
Well, and it's hard to explain how it's not how it's not crazy. And one reason I look forward to just some kind of disclosure is the fact that maybe someday we'll find that none of us really knew what was going on at all. Right.
We're just getting closer as time goes on, right? Our models become more refined.
Yeah.
We were wrong 100 years ago and have to go back.
What's funny is I was going to try to tell people where they could find you all, but all of your names are your channel names, right? Oh, because even you're not Stay on Target, right, Chris? You're Chris Lehto.
Yeah, it's Chris Lehto. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you all know where to find these guys now, and all the channels are very cool, awesome. And they're very cool. Well, thanks, guys. I hope you'll come back sometime when I have in a while when I can maybe narrow down some more questions that I have, and maybe you all can.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
And
enjoy it.
My mind's spinning now. I have to go contemplate.
I want to see that.
Mine too.
Interdimensional telescope model.
Let's do it. I'll sketch up, right?
I'm gonna build it, man. Whatever it is, we're gonna build some giant spinny thing.
That's what I was trying to think.
It's gonna happen soon.
When I was saying, send me some SketchUp information, and I'll put it in SketchUp, and then we'll have something.
The more we talk about it, the more we'll be able to actually build one, right? Because it's going to be a team effort from humanity, kind of thing. And so it's like we just need to keep talking about, and then investors will come by. We'll say, okay, we'll get our team together and we'll build it.
Interdimensional telescope. There you go, Rather.
That's it.
Yeah,
you're on the team.
I think we solved it. Yeah,
we solved it.
Finally.
Solved.
All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, see you.
See you. Ciao.
Awesome. Oh, there's Luis. Luis, we should have got. Next time, I'm getting you on here, Luis, with us. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And my mind is kind of wasted for now. We'll see you next time.